Achtung. Welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk with me, Al Murray, and James Holland. And James, we've got a very special guest today, an old pal of yours to talk to.
Yeah, really special guest, because we've got Mike Chalky Peters, and Chalky and I go back a fair way, it has to be said. Chalky's former Army Air Corps. He's a published historian, glider pilots over Sicily, glider pilots at Arnhem. He's just written a book about the 8th Air Force at Ridgewell, and he's also former head of the Guild of Battlefield Guides, and he's run businesses doing battlefield guiding. And Chalky and I first got to know each other, didn't we, Chalky, going to Sicily. We were both there at the infamous PCA breakdown moment on the beach. We were there. We witnessed it.
We were.
Yeah, I mean, you're an absolute mine of information about this, not just about Glider Pilot Regiment, but also about being on the ground at Market Garden. You know, both at Arnhem, Nijmegen, Eindhoven, the whole shebang. So,
yeah, very lucky. I was looking through some stuff yesterday, and there was a little bit. In fact, it's in the acknowledgements of the book, saying thanks to the sergeant pilot from the Parachute Regiment who took me on my first battlefield visit to Arnhem in 1984.
Wow.
Yeah, and we bumped into some glider pilots there, and it was just phenomenal. And that, I mean, I already had the bug, but once I'd seen the ground and been around the old Hartenstein, etc., and I was going on a monthly basis, really, with groups of soldiers in minibuses. And then after a while, the guy who was the curator of the museum said, I'm going to take the guys out again. You've done this tour 1,000 times. Why don't you just stay here in the archives? So he used to lead me in the archives at the Hartenstein and just go through whatever I wanted, you know.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It was amazing.
So is the archive at the Hartenstein? That's pretty good, is it?
Yeah, it was then, yeah, and a lot of it's digitised now. I mean, there's so many different sources you can go to now. I mean, as we were talking about earlier, you know, so many of the books are the same.
Yeah.
You've now got Pegasus Archive and Paradata and all the very good Dutch historians who know that ground intimately. You know, not least Luke, who helped me with the book, Luke Boost. You know, who's a co-author on the Glider Pilot Arnhem book. They know every single fold of that ground, even though it's been built over the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, having walked it very recently, the thing I think that I started to become really struck by is it's a peculiar battlefield, and that we almost know every inch of it. You know every house, who's in every house, pretty much. Because it's a contained period of time. You know, it's 9 days in total. It's sort of, it's almost. You'd think you could know everything there is to know about it, but evidently that's impossible. Even with only 10,000 men landing in the city, you know, landing in Arnhem and Oosterbeek. You know what I mean? It's just this sort of. No matter how deep you push into it, there's more to find, right?
Yeah, it's almost like the Wellington quote about being, you know, dancing at a ball, you know. Yeah. And every time I was lucky enough to walk around there with mainly glider pilots, you know, and some of the stories they'd come out, I think, wow, I didn't know that, and that's not in any history I've ever read, you know. Yeah. And then somebody will say, oh yeah, I was just across the road and I saw something completely different, you know, as they did. But it is, that's part of the chaos, though, how well documented it is.
Yeah.
And how much bad history there is about it, you know.
Go on,
give us some bad history then.
Go on.
Well,
what do you think's the bad stuff?
There's some good history. I mean, you know, we're all going to go on to. Obviously, we're going to mention a bridge too far, you know, and we all. That's our key point, and to the point where I've taken staff college people there, or you know, civilian groups, and say, "Who are you talking about?" And I go, "Yeah, the guy Sean Connery played." Oh, him, yeah, and they associate Horrocks with your man. You know, it's just everybody. So. It's just, how could you make that film and get it all right? And how could you get the whole story in? And there's so many what-if moments in there that aren't in there, and so many human dynamics aren't in there. I mean, there are just some very dodgy books and myths, you know, and the same old photographs being trotted out time and time again, you know, and you think, come on, guys, try a little bit harder, you know, just do a little bit more and look somewhere else. You know?
Yeah.
I suppose the thing I find really interesting is you kind of you do. I think we all feel we know the story of the bridge, don't we? We've kind of
we think
done
we do,
that.
Yeah,
but you know what I mean. I mean that's the bit that's being covered ad infinitum, isn't it? But all the kind of fighting in the woods to the north, even on day one, the 1st Battalion getting sort of ensnarled and all that. And then there's got a destruction of 4th Brigade. It's just fascinating, all that, isn't it? And when Al and I were standing out there the other day and we were looking across at it and looking at these huge woods and then that huge ridge line, and sort of in the far, far distance, you could just see that huge kind of mast that's now on kind of just above Dent Brink in Arnhem itself. And you're thinking, flipping out, that's quite a hike. That's like me being in Broadshot looking at Salisbury Cathedral. It's quite a long way
and you
away.
try not to think about Gene Hackman saying, just checking whose side you're on as you do it.
Well, this was the striking thing, Mike, because when we went, because we walked from Hilsum to the bridge along the Lion route, basically, and then the next day we went back out in the coach to the landing zones. And when you get to the centre of the LZs and DZs are, it's obvious why they chose them. They're perfect. They're exactly what you'd want. If what you're trying to do is dump a vast amount of people, organise them, and then go to battle, they're absolutely perfect. You can see why the air planners were keen on them. Why in the end the glider, why Urquhart and Division accepted them, and of course the push me pull you in the historiography about where that idea comes from, who owns choosing the landing zones. Is it the Army? Is it the Air Force? Is it First Allied Airborne Army? Is it the air component? Is it
Brereton,
who does that, or Williams even? Who does it belong to? That decision. But when you're standing there in the middle, you think, well, I'd pick this.
I've got to say, Chalky, Al was just standing there going, well, you would, wouldn't you? You would.
well, actually, when you really do get into the week leading up to it, or let's go back a bit beyond Comet.
Yeah.
It all seems quite simple. And it's a bit like the 1st of July, isn't it, on the Somme? You think if you read the plan and you don't know the enemy plan and forget the enemy's got a vote, you think, and what seems to be happening, we've just taken Brussels, we're doing 60 miles in a day. Everything's in collapse. And perhaps, one of the things I do argue sometimes when I've had a couple of beers is maybe if they'd gone when they said they were going to do Comet with the market garden plan, it might have worked. But then every time you get to that, I used to talk to Arthur Shackleton, one of the glider pilots, and he used to tell me the story about going back down the corridor afterwards through to Nijmegen by ambulance, and the ambulance being stopped numerous times by German checkpoints. They cut the corridor, checking who was in the ambulance, who wasn't, and letting them go.
Yeah.
And I think that the big one for me, which when I was researching, was when George Chatterton, the CEO of the Glider Pilot Regiment, says to Browning, "We can do a coup de main. That bridge is big enough. We can land hoses on the bridge. It's that big, and nobody wants to take that risk." Yeah,
well, he says they accused him of being a murderer.
Yeah.
And
this is the man. This is the man who goes into Ponte Grande and in Sicily. So and I think. Without wishing to go right to the end, if we go right to the end and you listen to that audio clip of Urquhart, and he says, even if we'd known all the things that we now know, we'd still have gone. Yeah. And there's that difference of culture between 1st Airborne Division and 6th Airborne Division. I don't think Windy Gale would have gone.
Well, but I also think that there's a difference there in the culture between the two divisions, in that there isn't a 1st Airborne Division culture because it's not been raised. Yeah. It's been raised piecemeal. It's been cobbled together. Yeah. It's been brought to battle in sort of all sorts of different ways. Whereas 6th Airborne has one thing to do. Yeah. Is raised and trained with one purpose. He's picking his lieutenant colonels. He's picking his brigadiers. Gale, he's kitting himself out with
clean sheet of paper.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not entangled in a lot of the stuff that's come with the formation and foundation of airborne forces. All these people, he seems to have a cleaner sheet in terms of the sort of the ambitions of the players as well.
I was just going to use the ego word. I was just going to say there was a lot less ego around 6th Airborne.
Yeah, so it seems, and I mean, it's certainly, we ended up talking about this a fair bit on the tour. The fact that, I think when the moment when Hackett arrives at the Hartenstein and tries to pull rank, and I know he's pissed off because he's had a battalion taken off him, and that's Hicks's decision. Who's done that in Urquhart's absence? So he's probably thinking, well, has he really got the authority to do this? But to turn up and do that just seems like a very strange way to enter the scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
Definitely.
Hackett's brave as an ox. You know,
Can't deny that, but you know,
can't deny that. But I mean, the conclusion I think we both came to, Al, was that none of the brigade commanders are particularly impressive, really.
Well, you know, let's look at. I mean, Lathbury,
one by one.
Lathbury, you know, it's Lathbury's part of the plan is to send the 3 battalions down 3 separate routes.
Yeah.
So the deconflict.
Well, that's not a great idea, is it?
Well, on paper, it seems a good idea because he wants to get to the bridge quickly and he doesn't want them to get in each other's way. So let's go down. And it's old men and bicycles, or whatever you believe the intelligence brief is. You know, he's going to go for that. But you know, it's almost.
But
like,
he delays an hour. What's he doing? Faffing about?
Yeah.
Get a move on.
Yeah. Well, you know, and the radios. Let's not talk about crystals, but the radio comms themselves. The situational awareness of Urquhart when he's on the ground in the back of his Horsa glider, using it as a command post. You know, and he can't get hold of anyone. He can't get hold of Gough, and he doesn't know. So he sets off to find Gough. Gough set off to find Frost. Yeah. They're all, and of course, once you retune your antenna, lose the frequency on that type of radio in those days, you've got to stand still and be static to tune back in again. So once you've lost comms, you've lost comms. You know, it's a difficult thing to do, and in that scenario, that's absolutely critical in the first few hours.
Yeah, especially as you know, your USP as airborne soldiers is turning up while everyone's trying to figure out what to do about you. And if you're trying to figure out what to do, you're burning that time away, aren't you? You can't put yourself in the same chaotic position as the enemy finds himself. Anyway, can we talk about the Glider Pilot Regiment because it's such a fascinating story? Because I mean, is it the shortest lived regiment in the history of the British Army?
I'm pretty sure it is. I mean, somebody's going to pop up on, especially in the independent company, and say, "Oh, actually, no. There's a group of bottle washers who are in Lucknow in 1749 or whatever." But you know, in modern times, I'm pretty sure it is. If you count it as it's wartime, because it actually technically exists until 1957.
Yeah.
But the old Army Air Corps collapses at the end of the Second World War, is broken up, etc. So yeah, combat wise, they are. I think, definitely.
Because it's the most amazing sort of genesis, isn't it? Because they've got this endless problem that the RAF don't want to give them any aircraft to practice with. Pilot training is after all the RAF's thing, and then you've got the Rock and Chatterton camps within the regiment. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
It is really, when you think about. Of course, the Germans solved the problem by having their Fallschirmjäger inside the Luftwaffe. That's it fixed, isn't it? There, we fixed it for you. So, and we don't after Operation Granite, even Amel, we don't do that. And there's all that wrangling that goes on all through 1940, and and of course a lot of the main disciples of the RAF, Trenchards disciples, they don't believe in it. And the great quotes about glider pilots being corporal in the infantry, etc.
Yeah,
but a lot of it is one of Churchill's better ideas and better causes he champions. That we do need this. And you mentioned the Rock and Chatterton. If anything could divide a group of veteran glider pilots in a room in a pub one night, it's the Rock Chatterton debate about which one. And why.
Well, are you a Rock guy or a Chatterton guy? Is that basically it?
Ooh, well, it pretty much was, actually. Yeah, if you were one of the early guys, I remember talking to Jock East, who was a Sicily veteran, etc. And he was in the Rock camp, and most of the early guys were, because they went through training with Rock.
Yeah,
and Rock was one of them. And he would never ask them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. And Chatterton is just this completely different animal.
To tell me, I mean, I've read Chatterton's book and I've got a pretty good idea of his character. But I mean, what's your take on him?
Well, he's an old Etonian, isn't he? I don't, and that's not a sweeping generalisation. I'm just going to say he's one of those. Yeah. As is Browning. He's good mates with Browning. He teaches Browning to fly.
Which is why they're hanging out together.
Yeah, exactly. But Grenadier Guards, Dunkirk. And so he's in the Queen's Rate. So he's Royal Air Force, same time as Barder. He's in his accident. He comes out and he gets back in, and he's in the BEF in 1940s, part of the Queen's Regiment. He's an infantry officer. He sees the Coldstream Guards and the Grenadier Guards withdrawing good order to Dunkirk, marching down the beach, etc. And he's mightily impressed by all of that and everything else he saw of them in the campaign. And I think when you read between the lines, he's a very good second in command. Rock is a is a good leader and a doer and everything. And Chatterton is the staff officer, but he's also he's a qualified RAF pilot. He's a fighter pilot by trade.
Yeah. So he can talk to the RAF in their own language, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is part of it. I mean, the fact obviously you're going to get different characters like this appearing in this kind of organisation, aren't you? Because it's new and it's not established its culture yet. After all, if you go into the Guards culture is established. If you go into the Royal Engineers, their culture is established. But this is a thing inventing itself, sort of like it's like a petri dish with mould in it. They don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
But is also the problem that is he a bit of a dilettante? I mean, is he kind of, is he too posh for his own good? I don't know. I mean, can he relate to the kind of?
Well, you've got to
the lads.
It's not like the Royal Flying Corps before it, is it? You've got a regiment that's 90% senior NCOs, and most of those senior NCOs have come from being junior NCOs. I used to talk to some of the guys who were like Mike Dauncey and people like that, and say being a lieutenant in a regiment of sergeants and staff sergeants, was no easy ride. And it was a very different organisation pre-Sicily to after Sicily as well, and under Rock and under Chatterton. And you can see where Chatterton wants to go with it, and actually, all of his idea of the total soldier, and a lot of the glider pilots said, well, what a load of rubbish that was, we never believed in that. But, it proofs in the pudding at Arnhem, of what those men are capable of. And I never, ever, ever heard one of them call themselves elite in any way. Never, ever. But, pretty much, I want you to be a same elementary flying qualification as a fighter pilot. Then I want you to go and be an infantry battle school sergeant. Oh, then you can fly heavy gliders. And by the way, anything in the back, radio, weapon or vehicle, you need to be able to use.
Hell.
Yeah. So you're expecting quite a lot of them, aren't you?
You are. Oh, and you've got to be really good at drill, because Chatterton thinks drill is really important.
Because that's his thing, isn't it? But they have some pushback on that. He has some pushback on that, doesn't he? It's not necessarily popular, the sort of bullshit end of things from Chatterton, is it?
No, it's not, and a lot of the guys do rail back, but he uses it as a vehicle at the start to get rid of the hundreds and hundreds of guys he doesn't need.
Yeah,
if you rock up at the railway station and your buttons are undone or whatever, right? You're no good. You're not good enough for glider pilot. That's another way to get another one got rid of.
Yeah,
and you work your way through it, because they can take anyone apart from tank crews, because tank crews you're not allowed to use tank crews. Right. So everyone in the army in 1942 wants to fly, but hasn't got any exams or whatever, can't get in the Air Force. Well, I'll go fly gliders in the army. And, and if you talk to the guys, one of the first things they will say is, you got to live in a mess with sheets. That was it. You lived in an RAF mess and you got sheets, and you got to fly, which you'd never have got to do as a pioneer corporal or an infantry corporal or whatever. So there's a lot of kudos and a lot of incentive to do it.
How many hours would they get on horses when they? Obviously, like you say before,
not very many before Sicily.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Is that there's obviously, like you've alluded to, the culture change after Sicily.
Yeah.
And also it's also stepping up for D-Day as much as a change of culture with the lessons of Sicily, isn't it? It's like they're sort of dropping gears, and they've got to flesh the thing out properly, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, and they go through the basic aptitude tests, and then they get into Tiger Moth or Magister and do fixed wing flying. With people treating them like Cecil Lewis, Sagittarius Rising. He's one of their instructors, and all these guys who pop up again. You think, I wonder what happened to him. There he is, flying Tiger Moths with glider pilots in it. Great. Imagine having him as your tutor. So as James has just hinted at, pre-Sicily, the guys have some of them got 8 hours on Horsa and one at night. And they're building their own. It's a separate story, I know. Building their own gliders, living in the crates, and all of that. And they're a different bunch of guys. And it's interesting that when they come to form the Hamilcar Squadron, C Squadron, they take all the Sicily veterans and stick them in the Hamilcar Squadron. And it's unusual also that they adopt the RAF system where you choose your co-pilot.
Right.
So it's very, very different system with C Squadron. So they're not elite, but different. They're flying the Hamilcar
on top of everything else. Then.
Yeah. On top of being a good phrase in some cases. Yeah.
Or underneath it.
Exactly. But the modular system, Hotspur glider, which that has its own problems at the start, and then conversion to hawser, and you've got this total soldier thing going on, which can take you almost a year to get the whole thing done.
Yeah.
But they're good pilots. They've got the hours, etc. And then they realise with Normandy coming up in the next year, we're just not going to have enough pilots using this model. So they go to literally on the job training. You do the basic, and then you go to instead of going to heavy gliders, you go to a squadron as a second pilot, and you become a first pilot on the squadron. So and a second pilot is a sergeant, and a first pilot is a staff sergeant.
Gosh, because I mean, one of the things that immediately springs to mind is these are expensive soldiers, aren't they?
They are, and that's why they get like get out of jail chip for Normandy.
Yeah.
And because we've only ever got enough glider pilots to fly one division's worth of gliders.
Yeah. And
we've got 2 airborne divisions.
Yeah.
So we made that mistake in Sicily, after Sicily going to Taranto, where we said, oh, well, Hopkinson, God bless him, decides, oh, we'll use them as infantry. We'll just send them across to Taranto to occupy Taranto. It's madness.
Yeah.
So, although when they go on Market Garden, one wing is divisional reserve at Hartenstein, and 2 wing is the Air Landing Brigade reserve, and takes phenomenal casualties in that role. Yeah. But they're only ever meant to be there for 48 hours and out.
Yeah, so you could see why the Americans they haven't adopted this model at all, and their glider pilots go and smoke fags in the divisional area basically, and wait to be relieved.
Yeah, or cause more trouble, because Gavin's letter after Market Garden talks about how he employed his glider pilots as to carry ammunition forward, carry medical supplies, etc., direct traffic, and he gave them a job.
Yeah,
but the other division didn't, and they were just causing firefights, going looting, doing whatever, or just getting in the way generally. And he advocates adopting the British system after Market Garden for American glider pilots. But their whole concept's built differently. Our concept is built. The hawser glider, thanks to Rock, is built around a platoon. And the Waco, and it is a Waco, not a Waco. I've been corrected so many times by glider pilots over the years. It is 2 behind 1 Dakota or whatever it's going to pull it. With the jeep or the gun, 1 in each, or the infantry splitting up. You're going to separate them straight away.
Yeah.
But it flies differently. It's got spoilers on top of it, on the upper surfaces, so it almost alights onto the ground. So it's easier to fly, shorter training program, which is all very good on a nice clear day in Arizona or wherever you are. But if you're going to hot landing zone and people are actually firing at you, want to get down as quickly and safely as you can, and that's the hawser with its barn door flaps. Yeah,
which sort of does like a tactical style landing, doesn't it? It comes in and you drop the nose and you're down.
Yeah, because that is my pet hate. James was trying to goad me earlier. That is my pet hate. Is the they crashed their gliders? They didn't crash their gliders. They landed it. It might have been a forced landing. Even Pegasus Bridge, they knew what they were doing. It was deliberate. They didn't crash their gliders. Because originally the hawser was designed to jettison the wheels on takeoff and land on the skid. And then they found actually the wheels were quite robust and the brakes were good, and it was better for steering when you landed. So they kept them on. So apart from turkey buzzard, when they flew to Morocco, they ditched them because of the drag and carried a spur set in the back.
Yes,
And Chalky, tell me a little bit more about Comet, and you told me about Jim Woolwork, and obviously he's the man furthest from the bridge on Sicily, the man closest to the bridge on for Normandy, for Pegasus Bridge, and then for Comet he's going to land right on top of the bridge. That's the plan.
Yeah. So Comet, as most listeners will know, is the earlier version of Market Garden, but just British only, 1 division, a brigade at each of the major bridgeheads, rather than 3 divisions spread. And as I said earlier, it's going on in the wake of the collapse of the Germans in Belgium and Holland. It's like, well, we could do this, and we all know about Monty going to Brussels and talking to Eisenhower and coming up with a plan.
Yeah.
So that what happens, it's done at much shorter notice. And I talked to Jim Woolwork about it quite a few years ago. I said, okay, what did you do on Comet? And he said, well, I was told I was going to lead a flight of 5 gliders with a company of KOSB in the back, with Major Buchanan, who is from the Whiskey family, was the OC, the company commander. And they were slated to land on the mudflats right next to Nijmegen Bridge.
Yeah.
All 6 gliders, but there were no rehearsals, one set of orders, no practices, not on the ground. The KOSB were just told, get in the back of the glider, off you go. And I said, well, how did you feel about that? After Pegasus Bridge, he said, I couldn't believe it. He said, Arthur Shackleton told me he thought it was a suicide mission.
Yeah.
And Jim Warwick said to me, him and Pearson, his co-pilot, we're going to land and surrender because we're going to be captured straight away.
Yeah.
They thought it was a one-way trip, far behind enemy lines. But then, when you zoom out and look at what was going on in the operational and strategic level at the time, you think there's quite a state of flux then, and the advent of airborne forces, although Nijmegen had an SS training school in it, or two, so it might have been a bit difficult, but at the time, would 30th Corps have been able to stick the pedal to the metal and whiz through or not? And this is what's so endlessly fascinating about Market Garden, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Comet, I think if they'd taken the good elements of Comet and done a coup de main, it wasn't even the Arnhem Road Bridge. If they captured the Arnhem Road Bridge, both ends, you still need the other ones further to the south, don't you? That's the whole, those 20 odd bridges you need, you need them all.
Yeah.
To do it.
Because the Comet was 4 Parabrigade doing Eindhoven, wasn't it? Air Landing doing the middle and 1st Parabrigade doing the top.
Yeah.
So it would have. So there would have been gliders on the Grava Bridge as well, and all that sort of thing. So really, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Normandy, and point I like banging on about is the only bit of the Normandy plan that goes according to plan is Pegasus Bridge.
Yeah.
Everything else goes awry.
Oh God, yeah.
And yet they achieve their aims.
And yet they still achieve their aims. And then after all, because the whole thing's successful, you don't need to. You don't investigate how harebrained some of the planning might have been.
No.
You look at the Merville battery plan, for landing the gliders on top of the battery, those guys with the luminous skulls and crossbones on their smocks. I mean, that's all totally harebrained, isn't it? And
I stood there last week and told that story. I gave those orders. It was just
it's completely nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And yet Normandy's success. So we don't get too hung up on the fact that the intelligence isn't quite right as to who they're going to face in Normandy. No. 6th Airborne, and the fact that the drops are so chaotic that Rosevier's explosives have gone somewhere else, and all that sort of stuff. Yet with Market Garden, because it goes badly, we parse it all very, very finely and find all the things that are glaring errors.
Yeah, if you read the post-operational report for the Glider Pilot Regiment from Normandy, it basically says we're most likely to be used in the anti-sniper role. So two in each flight should be given sniper rifles and sniper trained, with 2 extra guys with Sten Mark. Get rid of the Thompson machine gun. We need the Sten Mark 5. Right. And then there's a bit about the Bergen. Because we don't have our own indigenous integral cook support, so we need to carry everything. So we need Bergens. So you see them in Arnhem with all the pictures around the Creamer House with Bergens on their backs. And we don't need a torch because one part of the glider equipment scaling. And there's a few of the little... the red theophane lights don't work, the green ones do. And that's about it, really. There's nothing about the flying side of it, unless that was wrapped up in the RAF 38 group report or whatever. The rest of it is all good to go, let's do it again.
Right. That's fascinating.
Chaos reigns, but then that takes us into the cancelled operations, doesn't it? How many times you go through that loop of being told you're locked down in the old sense of the word and not allowed out of camp, and we're going to go, and those Wild Oats, Linnet 1, Linnet 2, all those different operations and crossing the Seine, and some of those are mad. Yeah. If you look at the plan for Linnet, you think, oh my God, no one's coming back from that one.
Yeah. Yes, it'd be a Soviet-scale disaster, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would, absolutely. But it's the old coins burning a hole in the pocket sort of thing. We've got to use these airborne forces or else.
Well, it's an indisputable point that if you've got an Allied airborne army, you might as well use it.
Yeah.
And you're running out of people.
You're
running out of infantry. There's going to, at some point, you're going to have to decide. Because after all, 52nd Lowland, the moment Market Garden's over, right, you're coming out of strategic reserve. We're just going to use you. You're not going to have you sitting around waiting to be air landed. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll take a very brief break, and we'll be back in a second with more of this, with deep diving. Welcome back to We Have Ways of Making You Talk with me, Al Murray, James Holland, and Mike Chalky Peters, who is giving us, we're sucking hard on the Glider Pilot Regiment pipe right now, ladies and gentlemen, so to speak.
We are, but it's appropriate. We've just been
it's absolutely fascinating, all this, Mike. So Normandy is characterised by coup de main, but actually what happens, the big Glider Pilot contribution to Normandy is the second lift, isn't it?
Operation Tonga and Operation Mallard, and if it does nothing else, it turns 21 Panzer around. Yeah, because they see them coming in and think, hey, we're not gonna. Well, let's get out of here. Let's get out of Dodge. And we were talking in the first half about things that went wrong. They tried to use Tetrak tanks in Normandy, and they never got off the landing zone because of the paracord strewn all across the landing zone. It's like, well, that's always one of the great what ifs of market going. What if Goff had Tetrak, or I think a Panzerfaust would make pretty much short work of a Tetrak.
I think it'd have run into trouble.
For those who don't know, these are very, very small paratanks.
Yeah.
You can go and see one at the Tank Museum. Yeah, it's mightily unimpressive.
Yeah, but the big surprise they did get delivered was the 17 pounder, because the Germans hadn't expected that, and that comes in the Hamel car.
Yeah, much more like it.
But with probably the worst prime mover to move it around the battlefield possible, the old Morris 3-ton thing, it breaks down all the time. And that's one of the problems they have. And the glider pilots are involved in that, because they are. If you're a glider pilot carrying a 17 pounder or a 6 pounder, you stay with that gun, and you serve that gun and operate it.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And the gun line, the air landing artillery, their local defence is provided by the glider pilots who fly them in.
Right.
So that's where G Squadron are with Mike Dauncey down by the church. Yeah.
So that's how G Squadron end up round the battery, right?
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So they're okay. Right. They take 8 17 pounders, don't they? And two end up stuck in inaccessible, don't they? After landing, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And a couple end up outside the Hartenstein.
Forevermore. The problem is as an anti-tank weapon is an ambush weapon. Yeah. And the tank comes to you, and if you read the accounts, there's more and more. Certainly with the 6 pounders, they're trying to move the 6 pounders around to get the tanks. Yeah. Because they haven't got enough of them, etc. Yeah. And a 17 pounder isn't about to be manhandled very far at all. Although anything that comes its way. Yeah. So. That's one of the big issues, and I do think Urquhart gets a bad press in some cases because he front loads that for a first lift with as many anti-tank guns as he can get into it. Yeah, he knows what's possible, what's potentially going to happen.
But you could argue that. Do you think that was a mistake, or do you think that was quite sensible? I mean,
I didn't think he. Without that, going back to what Al just said about Comet, an airborne division in World War II, as we know, is 3 brigades. You've got your parachute brigade, who are your attack dogs, much lighter, and you've got your air landing brigade, two para brigades and your air landing brigade. An air landing battalion within that brigade got twice as many medium machine guns as a normal battalion, twice as many anti-tank guns, and twice as many mortars. Okay. So to compensate for that, so that's your heavy punch that comes in because it comes by glider. So they really do need to work together, and it's a question of which one you put on the ground for. So. Going back to the plan, sending the attack dogs to grab the bridge, that makes sense. Bringing in your heavy anti-tank guns and your mortars, etc., reinforce, and then holding on to that firm base for your second lift. Yeah, okay, yeah, I can go with that.
But the second thing is, don't bother with the second lift, then you haven't got to hold the people back, and they can all go to the bridge.
Well, but then if Eindhoven, Nijmegen and all the other bridges haven't been taken because you've not supported them properly with the right lift and etc. Then, because I always get people.
So, is the bottom line is it's just not enough for the job?
It's just not enough for everything. It's quite ambitious. It's the Germans at the bottom. The Germans are the bottom line, aren't they? Like I say, if you did it a week before, 10 days before, the Germans were not in the same state. Yeah, yeah. But to have second SS Panzer Corps just cooling their heels nearby. And Modal's headquarters in Oosterbeek, that's just That's just bad, isn't it? He's the man, the only man on the Western Front who can make a decision straight away happens to be on the spot before you've even rolled off the drop zone or landing zone. The second SS Panzer are already on the way. Beatrix moving his troops already. It's and as Al said earlier, why does it take so long for First Airborne to get moving? And when they do get moving, they don't all go that quickly, do they?
No.
Well, so the thing that I've been putting to Al and I've been saying is why have you got, forget Lafferty in his hour. I mean, that's appalling. But why is it they're coming down at kind of, 1:50, 2 o'clock, something like that? And
I know why.
And the recce squadron's not going till 3:30. It's just like, get a move on. And why can't you just say, you don't need to assemble because you're paratroopers. You can use your initiative. Everyone was coming down willy-nilly on D-Day, and they all managed to do their job no problem. So
let's go
get
back
a move on. Just go straight to the bridge.
Why not 2 lifts in a day is the eternal question. And you say, well, actually, because of the amount of lift, and you've got to go bottom up. But also, the Allied Tactical Air Force needs the half of the day to destroy the anti-aircraft en route.
Yeah.
So whenever you look at it, it's like, we could just go in the morning. Well, actually, no, you can't. Because we've got 1,000 fighter escort. We've got all tactical air on this side of the channel is going to be knocking out anti-aircraft. All tactical air on the English side of the channel is escorting. And it's all got to be cleared. Those lanes have got to be cleared because once they're on the ground, the Germans know where you are. Those lanes are going to get quite busy.
I totally get that. My point is more is that once you've come down on the landing zone, everyone's sort of neatly forming up into their battalions and units and platoons and companies and all the rest of it. And my point is, why? You don't need to do that. All you need to do is just hot-foot it to the bridge ASAP. You can form up at the bridge.
I would say this, wouldn't I? But if you'd used the glider battalions, that wouldn't have happened. Because if you look at the photo imagery of the glider battalion landings, 67, 68 gliders per battalion, they're all in one end of the field, all together, no need to, all with their kit on.
Yep.
Just go. Well, that's 2020.
You have to admit, which way you look at it, there's quite a lot of faffage going on.
Yeah.
At the drop zone and landing zone.
But is that because of?
I think it's because it's a big flat space and everyone's, and it's so becalmed, and you just think, no, all right, we've got plenty of time here.
Or is it because you're worried about the enemy? You don't know where they are. I think we all need to be together before we set off.
That's what it is. Yeah. I think it's that, and it's memories of Sicily where everyone's scattered all over, and you want to be able to make. Hackett calls it a most untidy battle, doesn't he? When he arrives at the Hartenstein, which is really telling. I think that's he wants to fight a tidy battle. And you don't if you're you don't.
He would though, wouldn't he?
Well, he would. Of course he would. But you don't if you're airborne. That's not sort of not what you're not in the tidiness trade, are you? You're there to cause a mess.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting that's what he's thinking. And Urquhart's endlessly trying to grip and coordinate all the time and impose. Certainly the battle in the town, he's forever trying to impose his authority. And
it's such a contrast to Brigadier Hill, isn't it? He goes, don't worry if there's lots of chaos, because there undoubtedly will be. Words to that effect. None of the first Airborne Brigadiers are saying anything like that, are they?
No, I think that's where we're talking about the culture of the two divisions. They're very different in the way they've been developed. Or melded together or not melded together, as you might say.
Chalky, sorry. I mean, you've met loads of glider pilots who are at Arnhem. I mean, they must have told you some good yarns, didn't they?
Oh, crikey, yeah. I mean, the most modest of all is Mike Dauncey, who recommended for the VC and gets the DSO, and when his 93rd birthday, we invited him down to the attack helicopter force when I used to work there, and we had named the conference room after him and put up on the wall. We put the citation, and I said to him, "How did you feel about when you saw that citation with VC crossed out, DSO written on it, and BLM Bernard Law Montgomery signed underneath it?" He said, "I was damn lucky to get the DSO, as a young lieutenant, and he's wounded 3 times in the battle, And one of them is he's at a window, and he told me this story. He stood by the window. We'd been to see Kate to Horse, and we were outside the house, and he said, "This is where I was on the perimeter." He said, "I had a composite platoon of glider pilots, sappers and paras and all odds and sods, and we were holding the area around here around the bakery." I said, and there was a German sniper. So he said, we couldn't see where he was. So he said, I just kept exposing myself to the sniper. And I think he meant on the biblical sense, but he kept stepping out in the window to draw fire. And then the sniper fired, hit the window frame, which is a metal window frame, and a splinter of metal went straight in his eye. And he said it was awfully inconvenient. So, as he did in good Pathé News English, but he described then getting one of the paras to sit him down on the curbstone with 2 matchsticks, trying to get the splinter out of his eye so he could carry on normal jogging and keep on.
Was he blinded by it?
He was, yeah. So if ever you run a parade with him, and I think in 2010 he was the airborne pilgrimage leader. I stood next to him. He said, "Just tell me when to salute because I can't see them come from that side."
Wow.
But amazing. I talked to him about Browning, and
do say.
And he said when he was nominated for the DSO and he was due to go to book him, he found out in Flight magazine. Nobody told him officially. It was in Flight magazine. He read it in the mess. They'd been awarded the DSO, and he said then a letter arrived, and it was from Browning, Boy Browning. Basically sent him his own wings and said, "You're a second pilot. You can't go to see the king as a second pilot. I'm making you first pilot, and here are my wings." Which wow. I thought challenged the stereotype of Browning completely. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah.
We didn't give Browning that hard a time, did we? When we were over there last week.
No.
We didn't.
Oh, good. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I just landing his headquarters in Nijmegen is a peculiar thing to have done. Let's just.
Half a battalion lift, yeah.
I mean, what do you do that for? But
yeah. I think that's a fact, because I think it might have, because that half a battalion would have been there maybe, yeah. but also everyone had an eye on the end of the war, just before Market Garden. It was all going to be over by Christmas. Use these forces before you lose them. Justify the exist. I mean, one of the things I always think about is airborne forces didn't start until 1940 with the Germans. We don't really get going until 42. The Germans have Mercury and Crete, and they're coming the other way saying, been that, never going to do that again on a large scale, whatever. They're coming back down the development road in the opposite direction. And we and the Americans are charging the other way going, "Hey, airborne forces, this is great, because we've got air superiority or whatever. And the learning curve to go from Bruneval, through to Varsity, in that short, with so few actual
Bruneval
real
being the attack on the radar station.
Yeah. To do that and get all the way to Varsity, where you're crossing the Rhine with so few operational drops, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And there are going to be a lot of casualties along the way. But the casualties at Arnhem are not because of the drop, are they?
No.
It's minimal. It's a Sunday drop. Arthur Shackleton told me a story about capturing the German guy who's in the barn with the Dutch girl. His trousers around his ankles, sort of thing, and he's suddenly surrounded by half of the air landing brigade. It's just But then it's not long after that famous photograph of the 3 glider pilots with the SS guys in front of them. That's in the wake of the Wolfhaze ambush, the Gough ambush.
Yeah,
and those 3 glider pilots, Joe Kitchener, Duffy Edwards and George Milburn, and they were on the fringe of that battle, and they said, we suddenly realised what we'd seen at the landing zone were old men on bicycles, odds and sods, supply units, etc. These guys were from Kraft's battalion, training battalion, and if you ever look at that picture again, if you look at the guy on the extreme right, he's a really nasty, archetypal Nazi concentration camp looking guy, Yeah, and they said, we had constant problems with him, and then he said we shot him when he was trying to escape, because he did try and escape. So it's just so we said, but straight away at that moment when we had those 4 guys, we were like, this doesn't fit the in brief. This is not what we were. This is not what we were expecting. Alarm bells were beginning to ring with those guys already.
Yeah, does Louis Hagen describe being in the vicinity of that ambush?
He does, yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit when they're all in a field waiting to move forward, and then they go back.
Yeah,
They're,
exactly.
yeah, and because he basically spends a lot of his time waiting. He doesn't get really involved in battle until the perimeter's formed, does he?
Yeah, that's right.
He spends a lot of his time sort of not hanging around, but like not doing anything much.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at that picture now, actually, Chalky, because you sent it to me the other day. So which is the guy they shot? The guy on the right.
The one on the right. Yeah, they really.
He does look like a.
Yeah.
Jim, can you send it to me so I can have a look?
Yeah, hold on.
I mean, the battle in the perimeter is fascinating, isn't it? Because you do have this thing where lines get shortened and it sort of gets tidied up as the days progress. Because I mean, we went up to the White House, which is the barrier of the KOSB position, which they then do move sort of half a block back block back,
right,
don't they?
Yeah.
Away from the railway line because they're under so much pressure. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about it is how intense that fighting is, and how everyone's pell-mell on top of each other. Because we went to the Leppensweg, that hedge, the famous hedge in the photograph, and tried to figure out what they're doing. And they're facing the road as it comes, Utrechtsweg, as it comes into the west of the Oosterbeek perimeter, and there's that house between. So you could walking the ground, we were able to actually piece together how they were doing the running the perimeter. But it's just that Urquhart's trying to control it, and he's shortening his lines, and he's making those sort of decisions and moving people about, and
he's acting like a company commander, isn't he? And what you need when you do that is an aerial photograph from 44 or 45, and you see how much more rural that area is, because it's so built up now. It's far more open, and although there is a fair bit of urban scrapping going around the streets, but it's a very wealthy suburb. Generally, and it's quite open in places, especially certainly down by the river. It's very wide open.
Well, and the stretch that the border regiment are in, is very sort of rural and
leafy and wooded,
and hollows and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, you should have seen me, Chalky. Literally every slight scrape in the ground was the remains of a foxhole.
What you need is a nice piece of high ground.
Looked at it, raised his eyebrow, sort of unconvinced.
What you need is a nice piece of high ground that dominates that whole. Oh yeah, there is one, isn't there? It wasn't in West of Bowring, but it wasn't in the orders.
Yeah. Well, we did go there. That was great. I mean, one thing I'm looking at these four SS blokes in their uniforms.
I'm looking at them now.
I mean, Jesus, that's good camo, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
good camouflage. But they do. I mean, so I can't quite. The guy on the right looks like his hands come off, or has he just got his hand in his pocket?
Got his hand in his pocket, I think. Yeah.
Yes, they look like proper desperados, don't they?
They do, don't they? I mean, the guy second in from the left, he looks like a proper Hitler Youth, just out of training, straight into the Waffen SS.
The other guy, the one next to him, doesn't look like the sharpest tool in the shed.
No, he doesn't.
And the one on right just looks like a murdering bastard.
He does, yeah, absolutely.
Not that I want to kind of, be sweeping in my assessment without any cause.
For the listener, we'll put this picture up so you can draw your own conclusions at 80 more than almost 80 years distance. I mean, Mike, it's all very well Urquhart afterwards saying we'd have gone again had we known the risks. Was that the attitude of the glider pilots that you knew?
No, it wasn't. No, they they would have, as in
in order to.
Yeah, but the Glider Pilot Regiment goes into Arnhem at the zenith of its strength, really.
Yeah.
And they fly in 667 gliders. It's 2 battalions worth. So that's 1,334 glider pilots go into Arnhem. We've taken since 1942 to build that force up, and we've always got enough gliders. We've always got a couple of thousand gliders on hand in storage. So gliders aren't the problem. It's people to fly them. So the casualties are very heavy, and when they get back, Sicily casualties were heavy, but there weren't as many glider pilot units to choose from at that point. But when the 2 wings go into there and are involved in all the real nitty gritty of the fighting, and they're involved in every I always say to people when I talk about it that they fly the first wave in, and they mark the route out. And in between every single part of the battle, because of the nature of their role, they're attached to every single cap badge. They're involved in every bit of it. So, and for some of them, it's their first ever battle. I think there's a lot of regret about the number of guys who died there. Particularly those that, the German Jews guys who were Austrian guys who were glider pilots. If you look at the two different wings, one wing glider pilot regiment was the Div Reserve under Ian Murray. They had 131 killed.
God,
that's a lot.
253 prisoners of war. Now, if you look at the figures for no known grave, there are 46 glider pilots with no known grave, and 29 of those are in one wing who are around the Hartenstein. And the reason that they're no known grave is because their bodies are destroyed by artillery fire, the weight of artillery fire on the Hartenstein, because there's no other reason why they would be, no known grave.
Yeah.
And two wing who are in the thick of the fighting with 2 Air Landing, because they're filling all the gaps in 2 Air Landing Brigade in the street fighting, etc. Under John Place. 228 killed in action.
God.
466 prisoners of war.
Yeah.
So if you add the wounded to that, like Arthur Shackleton who go out on a stretcher, Mike Dauncey, they're not going to fly on Varsity.
No.
So when they say, "Oh yeah, whichever battalion lost more people," and but I think as a unit, the glider pilots paid a very, very heavy price for Arnhem. Very heavy price.
Well, which is reflected in having to use RAF pilots at Varsity, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. And that's another interesting story when you talk to the RAF.
That's a whole other tale.
Well, we'll have to get you back on for that one, Chalky.
Yeah. I was going to fly Spitfires.
Too bad.
Yeah, I do think they're proud of their place in the order of battle and what they did. And the way that it's a phenomenal story, as I was alluding to at the start, where from development to what it is now, or what it was then at the end at Arnhem. It was at its peak at Arnhem. Yeah. And well equipped, excellently trained. And that reads in the landing. The fact they went by daylight, the number of landings, the number of aborts, etc. Delivering complete battalions in minutes onto the ground, exactly where they should be at the right time in the right place. Yeah. Well, not the right place, the place they were ordered.
Yeah.
The place they were ordered to do so. Yeah. So many what ifs are on there, so many if onlys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been talking about this obviously an awful lot having gone there, and I get this sensation when I read about it. Each time I read about it, maybe it'll work out this time.
Maybe the second lift will come in on time.
Or maybe 3-Para won't stop for the night. That they'll push through and give the Germans the slip. Yeah,
I agree with you. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we were at the Hartenstein and we were at the sort of the new kind of super display. Sort of living history display almost at the basement they've got there now. And the last bit is all the prisoners and everything, and you kind of think, it still hurts, doesn't it? You know?
Well, yeah, and if you look at that picture we just shown of the 4 SS guys at the front, the 3 guys at the back are the guards in that big prison at the tennis courts at the end, down by the town hall as well. Yeah. They're in that picture as prisoners. Yeah. So Duffy Edwards is there, and Joe Kitchener, they're both sat there. And Duffy Edwards is the guy helping Lieutenant Cole next to the stug when they've got the guy and he's got the guy on his shoulder and he's carrying him past the stug. Yeah. That's Duffy Edwards as well. It's phenomenal, and there's so many subtexts and stories. The 2 guys who are wearing kilts, Ogilvy and Strathern, they're glider pilots. Yeah. It's they're an interesting and varied bunch of people, and what they've gone through to get from Sicily to Normandy to that is staggering, really, transformation wise.
Now you've written. So I was going to say, if anyone wants to what is there to read? Apart from your
Glider Pilots on Sicily.
Well, Glider Pilots on Arnhem.
Glider Pilots on Arnhem.
Well, because I got the Chatterton
Official History of the Army Air Corps about to come out.
Well, the Chatterton book's good fun. In a kind of I won the war way.
Yeah.
There's the old Lawrence Wright Wooden Sword, which is very good, in which Chatterton gets a quarter of a paragraph in the entire book.
Yeah, it tells a story, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, exactly. They're clearly that stuck with Wright. I mean, obviously, Mike, aside from your books,
there's Steve Wright. Steve Wright has written a couple, not the Steve Wright on the radio, but Stephen Wright.
That would be.
That would just be amazing. If it was the same book.
Or Stephen Wright, the deadpan American comedian. I mean,
yeah. No, Stephen Wright's done one on. He did a Normandy one, which is very good, and he's done one on Varsity, which is very good, very comprehensive. But and there's Claude Smith's concise history of the Glider Pilot Regiment. If you want to. It's a bit dated, but it's all there. You know, and you mentioned Louis Hagen.
Yeah.
And there's the Glider Pilot Association now around. And if you can get hold of the old Eagle magazine, which I used to be the editor of, that's packed. Well, the Colonel will be familiar with that.
Yes, he is very familiar with it. Yeah.
So. I used to check stuff by him actually.
Really?
he knows his stuff.
Yeah, I'm afraid that he does. That's the problem.
It is a problem.
Well, Chalky, you and I are back out on the road, aren't we, in October?
We are, yeah.
The Brothers in Arms tour from.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Calshot in Hampshire all the way through to Karlshofen, somewhere between Bremen and Hamburg. It's going to
be good fun. Yeah, it is. I'm really looking forward to it. And Chalk Valley as well. I'll be down for that. Two hoods. Yeah. I think if only somebody would make a TV series about the Glider Pilot Regiment, because what a story, and I know there are other great stories to tell as well, but this is just so. And I think if you're going to put a testimony to it, Gavin's letter after Market Garden, where he talks about the weaknesses of the training system for US glider pilots and how much better the British system is.
Yeah, he's brilliant, Gavin, isn't he?
Yeah, good like that. He takes the time immediately after Market Garden. It's one of the first letters he writes.
He's top bloke.
It's a burning issue. Well, I'm not going to go that far. He's right about glider pilots.
Yeah. Well, with the lid firmly on that can of worms, we're not going to.
We're not opening it. We're not opening it.
Thanks so much for coming to talk to us. This is a thing we could talk about all day, really. I know I certainly could.
We're just getting warmed up, aren't we, really? Yeah,
exactly. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We will see you all again really, really soon. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.